Not my own abduction, but my cousin was abducted. She lives in Mexico. She was walking home after being dropped off by the school bus when a van drove up. She somehow got loose from her rope and started to look for an escape. She's safe now, but she could never remember where the location of the barn was. She still feels guilty about it all. When I was 11 years old, we lived in a small villa behind a Canadian university. Just for reference, we live in a Muslim country, Dubai, UAE. When I was younger, I was really into skateboarding and would skate in front of our house. I heard my mother calling my name, and as I picked up the skateboard, a white Nissan Patrol came flying down the street with the passenger door wide open. I dropped my board and fled for the gate. As I opened the metal gate, I felt a cold hand grab my neck and try to pull me. I grabbed the gate and forced myself through it, closing it behind me. I was not abducted, but the feeling of the cold hand still haunts me 10 years later. My mother would steal my sister and me away and hide us from the rest of my family every time she'd get upset with our father. She'd leave us with any random person who would take us and leave. I remember bits and pieces, but mostly just being scared and wanting to go home. I couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. It was bad enough that my dad called CPS and gave up his parental rights to the state, who had us placed with our paternal grandmother. When I was about 13, my girlfriend and I were walking home from the library during summer break. We both had a few books and a beautiful day in northern NJ, so we were very happy. We reached the crossroads where she turned to go a few more blocks to her house and I would go the opposite direction, 3 blocks to my home. As we were standing on the corner just talking before we would have parted ways, a 60s style red car pulled up at the corner. A very attractive young blonde man in his 20s asked if we knew the location of Church Street. Where we were standing at the corner, you could clearly tell Church Street was about 20 feet on the other side on the main road where we were all stopped, so this question was odd. Furthermore, Church Street was only 1 block long, was one way and only had a large church and approximately 4 houses on it. What would this young guy in the cherry red car need on Church Street? My girlfriend, I just pointed to Church Street and said it's right there. Beard. Ned. The gentleman then introduced himself and tried to initiate conversation. He was articulate, attractive, and charming. Why was he talking to us? He made joke s, asked us about what we were doing. Did we know where to get a soda, etc. He told me that I had beautiful hair, long, wavy auburn, and that he was a hairstylist. He said it would like to cut my hair for free and would like to use me in a modeling show. He asked me to come take some paperwork so he could share some information. Though my hair got a lot of comments, I certainly was not model material. More weird. He kept talking, trying to be over-friendly almost, and it was just kept becoming more creepy. He offered to buy us sodas and drive us home since it was hot. After saying no many times in many ways and trying not to give him any real info, he finally drove slowly down Church Street. My girlfriend began to run home her way, and I wanted to get to my house ASAP. I remember thinking that if he went around the block that he would come up on me again alone, so I made the decision to take a slight detour and go down Church Street. It was risky since it was a very sparse street, yet I figured at least he could not really turn around on the one-way street, and if he did, I would see him coming. I cut through the church complex and made it home where I told my dad what happened. The police came and took a report and also talked to my friend. They mentioned that a gentleman had attempted to speak with another girl on the other side of town a few days prior who matched the car physical description. I never found out more information or heard anything else about, but that scared teen me for a long time. I was 5 and my family lived in a really poor part of town. I was never allowed to play outside for very long or in the dark. My only friend was my next door neighbor, who was about my age. On that day, my mom was really tired because of a new baby and taking care of me and my 2-year-old brother. I begged to play outside with my neighbor, and finally my mom said yes, as long as we stayed in the yard where she could see me from the window. About 20 minutes later, a green beat-up Plymouth stops in the road in front of our houses. A white man leans over and asks us if we had seen a dog. My neighbor just stood in the yard, but I couldn't hear well, so I started walking toward the car. I got about a foot from the passenger door and saw another guy start sitting up from the back seat. Then I heard a door slam and turned to see my mother running with no shirt on. She had just been breastfeeding my sister through the yard, yelling for me to get behind her and my neighbor to run home. The car sped off. The cops came and we moved several cities away. Years later, I found out that they were two men my father worked with. When the cops raided their house, they found all kinds of gross costumes and journals of their plans. I remember for weeks after that my parents made me sleep with them and even had my huge godfather move in and sleep in our living room. My brother was kidnapped in broad daylight while he and my parents were out shopping. This was in Chile, 80s. I can't remember how old he was exactly, but I want to say around 3 or 4. One minute he was there, the next he was gone. The police got involved, and they searched for him for a good while before he was found a few blocks away. A lot of children were kidnapped and sold off in those days. Luckily for my brother, the kidnappers didn't get far before they realized he had a large birthmark by his eye that would have made him worthless. It almost happened to my now wife while she was walking home one evening and decided to take a short cut through an alley. It was around 5 to 6 p.m. and getting dark fast. All of a sudden, a man approaches her from behind with a knife and guides her towards a white van with no windows in the back, where a second man was waiting. Once he slides the door open, she sees a window of opportunity and yells, "That's my purse. I don't know you," and tomahawk kicks him in the nuts. She runs nonstop for about 5 blocks and calls me gasping for air and screaming of what just happened. To make it a long story short, they never found the perverts, and she now carries a compact 9mm. When I was 11 years old, we lived in a small villa behind a Canadian university. Just for the reference, we live in Dubai, UAE. When I was younger, I was really into skateboarding and would skate in front of our house. I heard my mother calling my name, and as I picked up the skateboard, a white Nissan Patrol came flying down the street with the passenger's door wide open. I dropped my board and fled for the gate. As I opened the metal gate, I felt a cold hand grab my neck and try to pull me. I grabbed the gate and forced myself through it, closing it behind me. I was not abducted, but the feeling of the cold hand still haunts me 10 years later. I was not kidnapped, but my roommate was. While he was in Bosnia, he was part of an amateur football team when he was 15. They were practicing in a football field when several vans showed up and at gunpoint dragged everyone into their van. They were driven to a secluded wooded area and held there for several days. I don't remember what the kidnappers were after, if it was a ransom or something political. He told me that one night they were sitting around the fire. He was looking at one of his kidnappers and his head exploded. Soon another kidnapper's head explodes. The gunmen all get up and soon a firefight ensues. Apparently the military had shown up with snipers. It sounds amazing, but he was a very serious type of person. The kind of person that you know has seen too much. When my mom was younger, my sister, who was a baby at the time, was almost stolen. My dad was a security in the airport or something, and my mom was trying to make my sister stop being super pussy, like most babies are. This nice-looking young woman came up to my mom and offered to hold my sister so my man could get the luggage. My mom, who in her defense was tired and jet-lagged, gave the lady my sister to hold. The woman immediately sprinted off with my sister, but she was caught later by security